He leaves for work one day, and it was in the summer. And my oldest son was 7 at the time. He had started school, and he was going to a year-round school. So my husband, Clint, was his name. He walked CJ to the bus stop. CJ got on the bus, went to school. I had my other two, which were 5 and not quite 3. And the 5-year-old had a friend over. And we're just piddling around the house. And then I get a phone call. And it's just the weirdest chain of events that happened. It was my grandmother. And she said, Karen, why would Dr. Puckett was the preacher at the time. I'm just going to say names. Yeah. Okay, y'all okay with that? Okay. I'm great. All right. She's going to keep me in line and first off. So Dr. Puckett had called my grandmother because she was a member of the church and said, we're looking for Karen's parents. He did not tell my grandmother at the time why. So she calls me and she says, why is Dr. Puckett calling me looking for your mom and dad? And I said, well, I have no idea. I'll just call the church and find out, because I often call the church. I called the church, the secretary answers the phone, and she's fine, but she knows nothing. Dr. Puckett gets on the phone, and I said, Dr. Puckett, this is Karen Shelton. Why are you calling my grandmother looking for my parents? Karen, where are your parents? My dad's fishing, my mom's at a conference. Okay, well, I'm going to come and be with you. Okay, why are you going to come and be with me? Well, I've just been notified that something has happened to Clint. Well, what do you mean something has happened to Clint? Well, he's been in a bad accident. Well, okay, well, what hospital is he in? I'll go there. No, I'm going to come and be with you. No, Dr. Puckett, you're going to tell me, where is he? I'm going to see my husband. No, Karen, we're coming to be with you. Doctor, and by this time, I'm yelling, Dr. Puckett, is Clint dead? Tell me, is he dead? He won't say anything. I hang up the phone, and I didn't realize that the kids were standing around me because they heard me screaming. The little boy that was over visiting started crying. The little boy did, saying, oh no, something's happened to my dad. And I was like, here I am. No, your dad's fine. Your dad's fine. Everything is all right. I get them calmed down. I move them out of the room. I call my neighbor down the street, and I say, Terry, I need you to come get the kids. Clint is dead. And she's like, Karen, what's wrong with you? And I said, no, I know he's dead. Something is not right. So she comes and gets my kids. She calls another friend and says, you need to go check on Karen. She's over there saying, Clint's dead. I don't know what's going on. So my other friend comes over, and I'm in shock. I realize that's where I was. But my insides were scattered. I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? Where do I turn? My friend comes in the house, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I've never been a pray on your knees girl. I thought that was for everybody else, Never had prayed on my knees. My friend comes in the house, and she said, Karen, what is going on? And I tell her what happened, and I said, I've got to pray. And I walk over to my fireplace and I get on my knees. Never gotten on my knees. To me, that was foreign. I was on my knees. I said, God, I don't know what's going on, but all I know is I cannot do this alone. I cannot take another step. I cannot face those boys. Those 3 little boys. I'm going to need you. I need you now more than I have ever needed you. I stood up from that prayer, and it was like a peace came over me. I started taking care of business, of like trying to find my mom, trying to find my dad. By this time, the doorbell's ringing. And before the preacher could get there with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, the highway patrolmen were at my front door. And it just so happened that the highway patrolman that happened up on the accident was our neighbor across the street. He knew that we went to First Baptist. He's the one that called Dr. Puckett and told Dr. Puckett that Clint had been killed in the accident and that somebody needed to come and be with me because the highway patrol would be getting there shortly and they didn't want me to be alone. So they walked to the door. It's just like in the movies when you see that where they come to your door. I opened the door and I saw my neighbor and spoke to him. And, he handed me my husband's wallet and his glasses. And he said, very sorry. And the weirdest thing was the accident happened within 2 miles of our house. He had just left to go to work that morning. I had just kissed him bye. I heard the sirens. And I thought, wow, something bad has happened. Little did I know that bad was going to be knocking on my door. So, crazy, crazy things happened from that moment on. People, strange people coming into my house that I didn't even know that had known my husband or knew things that were, I mean, the words, this is 16 years ago, so McKinney was small. Word spread so quickly. People were showing up in my house. My kids got brought back home. They wanted to know what were all the cars, what were all the people, what had happened. I took the boys back into the bedroom, and I told them that their dad would not be coming back because he had been killed. And the reason I said it so directly is because my pastor told me to tell them that their dad had gone on a trip. But God gave me enough wisdom to know. See, and this was not from me. God gave me the wisdom to know that if I told them that their dad had gone on a trip and he wasn't coming back, that looked like their dad chose to leave them. And also, if I chose to go on a trip, the trauma, right. The first thing CJ, the oldest, said was, Mama, Mama, who's going to coach my baseball team? Who's going to grill our burgers? You know, all those. And I had to reassure him, you know what? We're still a family. We're going to make it through this. We're going to do this. I don't think they were real certain about that. CJ wasn't, because he was really a daddy's little boy. Through that tragedy, though, because I didn't want kids and I had these 3 kids, I look back and I see how God, if he hadn't given me those 3 boys, because he knew here I was going to be, if he hadn't given me those, I would have nothing. And they are so precious to me. We have been through struggles, but each time we get down in that pit, the only place I can go to be pulled out is on my knees again, crying out to God, because each time he had pulled me right back up, has loved me. When I have asked why, 16 years ago and to this day, I still say, God, why him? Why the loving dad? Why the great husband? You know, why not the drug dealer? Why not the child abuser? Why a man that was a godly man that loved me, loved his kids? And why leave me here? Me that does not want these kids. I am not smart. I cannot do homework. I mean, all those things came just flooding through. But I know because I had asked for wisdom, and because my mother told me this about 2 years afterwards, she's like, Karen, you were not always the brightest. But you changed when Clint died. I have been so impressed with the wisdom that you have had for someone of your age. And I told her, I said, Mom, it's because I got on my knees. I got on my knees and I was praying and I was crying out and asked God for his wisdom, for his direction, for his strength to take the next step. And I've had to do that so many times through our life together, my boys and I. I've gone to their rooms and knelt down right by their doors and just prayed over them as they have slept, as they have cried. There are different stages. You know, I've had to teach them to shave. Oh, I'm sorry.
We want you to be real.
So I've had to teach them the shaving. I have one son that has a testicle issue. I don't have those. So when he came to me, and he had been in pain for a long time, it took him a long time to come to me and say, Mom, I've got an issue. It didn't take me long to find a doctor, because I was not going to deal with that issue, because I did not know what we were going to do with that. But I prayed about it. Before I took him to a doctor, I prayed that God would show me the right doctor, because I didn't want to deal with this for a long time. And he did. We found the right doctor. My youngest son had lots of emotional issues, needed to see a psychiatrist. On my knees praying, God, you show me where to go. I went to several psychiatrists that were not Christian men. A couple of them I wanted to slap before I left the office, but I didn't. There's no warrants, I promise. But then he directed me to the perfect doctor. You know, the perfect psychiatrist, a Christian man that loved my child, and then encouraged me that you can do this, you can do this. Only by the grace of God could I do any of it. And that's what I've tried to teach my boys too. My youngest son about a month ago said, Mom, when Dad died, were you sad for about 2 weeks? No, son. You don't ever completely get over the sadness. It's always there. Well, but Mom, you kept on. You didn't. And I said, no, Caleb, I didn't give up. I wanted to. Several times I wanted to give up. I didn't want to get out of bed. But I also knew that God was with me because He had carried me. He had given me strength. I wasn't working. I was a single mom with 3 kids, no job, no insurance. I prayed about that. Fortunately, there's chips that you can do for your kids. I got on that insurance, took care, you know, every little thing that I needed.